good afternoon and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us, and as Alvaro said, thank you for staying with us during this last year. It is just over a year since we first started these panels, and I trust, like me, that you found them valuable. I've certainly enjoyed being part of this process, and I look forward very much to how we continue to support the visitor economy moving forward. But we are all moving towards, hopefully, the next stages in the roadmap. We know that from Monday, we will be able to start meeting people outside, actually going in to sit in people's gardens and actually having picnics with people on blankets in parks. So we're looking towards that, getting together with more people. But more importantly, we're moving towards April the 12th. We know that the Prime Minister always says it's all about data and not dates. But we understand the data is looking good, and for Liverpool as a city, we know that yesterday the figures were showing that we're only just over 37 per 100,000 people who had tested positive for COVID in the last 7 days. So that's moving in a very good way. And I want to say a special mention to all that have been making sure that they've kept in place all the guidance notes to ensure that we are all as a city moving forward out of this. But I wanted it, particularly in this first session, to come to Natalie and to Donna to talk about how your own businesses, you and Donna in Liverpool ONE with the whole estate, getting it ready for April the 12th. And particularly Natalie, within the focus around your business, you're one of our key independent food and drink and hospitality operators with venues, as we know, in Old Halls, in the commercial district and on Bold Street, and also over in the Wirral in West Kirby. In fact, your West Kirby operation only just opened before lockdown, before COVID impacted on us. So if I can come to you first, Natalie, we know this year has been very difficult for you. You have your business, a business particularly Oh Me Oh My, One Fine Day, that has been closed for the whole of this period. So what are your plans for April the 12th? Outdoor hospitality is reopening. And again, that is some difficulties for you as a business. How are you planning towards that? What will the visitors see when they arrive? And then also, perhaps we can come on and talk both of you about what will be the impact for staff and how we can work together on that.
Well, we're really lucky that we have some venues that have outdoor seating capability. So I feel very, very fortunate that 3 of the 5 or 6 venues that we have will be able to reopen in April. That would be Bold Street, West Kirby's got a big garden and the rooftop of Oh Me Oh My. Once again, it's going to be about making the customer feel really safe, making the staff feel really safe, trying to build the confidence of the customer again. Although we are really hopeful about customer confidence from what we have seen in terms of levels of inquiry since the roadmap was announced. And then monitoring consumer behaviour, because the customer has changed the way they behave literally every month for the last 12 months. So we will need to be eyes peeled on now, what does the customer want now? What do they expect? What have they been used to? And we've had to make quite a big investment really to get these spaces ready for the great British weather. So we've made quite a big investment in parasols. We've had to move to an order and pay app for the outdoor seating, and training, trying to mobilise the venues again, that some of them have been closed for 12 months, like the rooftop of Oh Me Oh My, and mobilise the team. We've lost a vast majority of the team who have decided to just leave the industry. So we've got to work on training them, getting them used to talking to customers again, used to being in the workplace. And we've had to make some really big changes as well. Bold Street is well famed for a great extensive menu that welcomes everybody, where there's something for everyone. But actually, if we operate just outdoors for 5 weeks on Bold Street and it rains for 2 of those weeks, our large menu with all of its ingredients just sits in the freezer, the fridges, and goes off. So we've had to really reduce our menus and totally change the way we operate to even stand a chance really of, I would say, breaking even doing outdoor trading. I don't think it's a profit-making exercise for us for 5 months. I think it's a fortunate opportunity to be able to look our customers in the eye and just see how they're behaving until we get to open our doors properly.
we know, Natalie, that even though we open outdoor hospitality, there will still be restrictions. So that the guidance around hands, face, space, as they say, there's the social distancing measures in place in restaurants, wearing face coverings until you sit down, and also the test and trace requirements are still going to be in place. How do you perceive your customers will view that?
To be honest, I just don't know. I think there's a large proportion of customers who are just going to think, you know, this is over. Stop bogging us down with all of these, you know, ways of behaving when all I want to do is behave normally. But it obviously is our responsibility to make sure that we stick to the guidance. We are registered for workplace testing as well for our staff, so that we know that we as a business can remain open, try and keep the city centre open, and give our staff and our customers confidence that we are COVID safe. But I think there will be a push. I personally think there'll be a proportion of people that are pushing against the requirements and regulations of the hands, face, space, and test and track and trace and things like that. I think people feel like we're in the clear now, and this is opening to be normal, not opening and being strangled again by how we should behave.
So how do you feel we should mix that? Obviously, we want the freedom of people to come in and feel that we're back to a normality. Yet we know, I mean, we know in Great Britain, and particularly in England, that we are benefiting from the high levels of vaccination, so we're able to get some of those freedoms. But European countries are nowhere near this. We haven't got any international travel planned for quite some time. So how do we get that message out to people? I know. And particularly, I think a younger generation, the older generation have accepted and acknowledged vaccinations, and really the take-up has been very good. But if we try to do that within the younger age group, is how we engage with them.
I don't know. We will certainly play our part in trying to communicate through point of sale and through online channels to try and remain open, to keep people safe, to keep the city open. I will forever feel immensely fortunate of being able to have that December trade when we'd all worked so hard to get the numbers down, that we were trading in December, and that's really, really helped a lot of us get some cash in the bank to get us through to, you know, April, May and June. So I think, you know, if we can communicate to our staff and our customers in the best way that we can, that we're all in it together and we still just need to hang on in there for another couple of months, then hopefully that will filter down. And as I say, we are doing the workplace testing. Hopefully other people, other hospitality operators are registered for that as well. And, you know, we will be promoting vaccinations and asking our staff to get vaccinated where possible. So I think that is all we can do, really.
And just another question for you about reservations. Will people have to make reservations to come?
So we are not taking reservations because we just don't have the confidence in the weather, unfortunately. So we have been absolutely inundated with reservations for the rooftop, and we have politely declined taking those reservations, which kills me. But I just feel that the operational challenges of trying to operate outdoors, you know, early spring means that we just have to kind of suck it and see. And those poor general managers that make the decision on the day of shall we open, shall we not, and they're looking at the sky, they're looking at the clouds. 1 minute sunny, 1 minute rainy. You know, I just feel that they need to be able to make those decisions. If you've got a book full of bookings and it's raining and you can't honour those bookings, then it's just a nightmare. So we've got sunshine shifts planned, and we're just going to try and be as flexible as we can with a limited menu, really, because, as I say, if we get caught off guard with bad weather, then actually it ends up costing us a lot of money.
So if we want to get up on top of Only on Mine, then it's get there early with the towels and the deck chairs.
Yeah.
Great. I'm looking forward to that. I'll come back to you in a moment, but if I can come to Donna, Liverpool ONE, major international retail destination and leisure destination, been closed completely or virtually closed since January. What's it been like for you as in charge of that estate? Obviously, you're also now sort of try and reawaken it. It's like awakening a giant, getting it ready.
Yeah, that's it. Bill, I mean, it's a huge part of Liverpool city centre, and it has been, you know, the offer has largely been closed other than for a small handful of essential retailers. So it's been really tough. It's not the start to 2021 that anybody would have hoped for or anticipated. But what we've actually done is taken the opportunity to think about what we can do during the time when we can't welcome visitors, which is what we're absolutely all about, and have spent the last 3 months literally polishing the whole of the estate from top to bottom to make sure that it is pristine. I mean, it's always kept clean and tidy, but there's been a real opportunity for us to step back and say, what can we do during this time to ensure that we're absolutely on the front foot as a whole estate and for the city, to ensure that when we can invite people back, when it's safe to do so, that we're in the best place possible. So it is gleaming. There's been huge mechanised machinery that's been out during daylight hours when it couldn't usually operate to clean the place from top to bottom. You know, it's been really great to see, really great to see actually the passion of the people that work across the estate and in Liverpool, who I think it's this optimism and it's this pride that everybody has within the city region. And it's that kind of fighting spirit to say we will come back and we'll come back strong. And one of the big indicators for me is you hear a lot about doom and gloom on the high street, and we do hear about names, Debenhams, Topshop. You know, it was on the horizon potentially. And I think obviously coronavirus has made things speed up probably tenfold than where we otherwise would have been. But it's really important to note as well that there's been a large number of stores that have opened both in 2020. Natalie, you said yourself there, you opened another store in another restaurant in West Kirby just as we were kind of approaching this. And we continued to open new businesses throughout 2020 during those times when we could open. And as we move into spring, we're ready to welcome at least another half a dozen new brands that weren't there this time last year. Now that shows that there is a real optimism in the city, and there's a real optimism in terms of people wanting to come back. And I think we saw that last year when we could come out of lockdown. By the end of August, we saw footfall numbers, visitor numbers that were level with that of 2019. We also recognise we had a real issue with the R rate rapidly increasing at the same time. This is different in that we have these programs running where the vaccination program in the city and city region, I understand, is being delivered really well. There is a far better, and the city was leading in terms of its ability for track and trace and testing. There'll be a testing unit within Liverpool ONE and other parts of the region for people to stay on top of testing. I know I've got kids in high school that it's becoming normal. They're testing themselves twice a week before they go into school. So in many ways, you know, all these things, wearing of face masks, it's changed fundamentally. It's a completely new way of life. But one of the things I kind of sat back and thought about this before coming on to this session, there's a number of things that have never changed. The need for really good customer service. What we've got to think about when we move forward now is we've got to make it worth people's while to get up out of their house, want to travel into our region to enjoy themselves. Good customer service has always been really important, but none more so than now. And the other thing that has never changed is the fact that people really want to come together, that we're social beings, we want to get together. And certainly, you know, within Liverpool ONE and across all the businesses within the city centre and beyond, we're about welcoming people and bringing them together. Yes, we have to do that differently now because we have to ensure that safety, a new form of safety, is paramount, and it has to be the first in our thinking. But those things haven't changed. Great customer service and bringing people together, but we are adapting and ensuring that as we come out and we reopen on the 12th of April, when non-essential retail can reopen again, is that safety comes first. Yes, we will still continue to ensure that we encourage people to wear face masks. There will be hand sanitisation units around the estate and in all stores as you go in and out. We'll encourage people to follow a one-way system, which is sometimes difficult, And also, I think just going back to what we did in the very first, as we came out of the first lockdown, which is to put the onus and remind people that it's their responsibility to follow the guidelines. And I think that, you know, by and large, the vast majority of people have taken that responsibility. They've stayed at home when we've asked them to stay at home, follow those rules. And that type of behaviour is helping us as a city start to come back out and get back to that degree of normality that everybody is absolutely craving.
Thanks, Donna. And it's important that, as you just picked up on that people do realise that when they come back into retail from the 12th of April onwards, which is only 2 weeks on Monday, that they will have to come back into an environment similar to it was last summer when it reopened. So we still go back in. There will be queuing systems in place. There will be the requirement for face coverings inside the shops. As you say, there'll be hand sanitizers. And you remember the strap lines that we used last year, which was the be kind, be patient, be responsible, are still very much to the fore in how we get that, how we come back in. And the important thing is, if we do that for this little bit longer, it may be another 6 months, but we will continue to do that. Then we will all come out of this far better. I mean, I'm optimistic about the future. Natalie, from your own business, you invested heavily. You're a young business. You've invested heavily in your sites, but obviously this year has been devastating for you as a business. How do you see the future?
It's a very strange thing because I think I personally got myself very bogged down in you know, the staff losing their jobs. When the furlough scheme was coming to an end, and that really awful scheme was about to launch the end of last September, and we were sort of every day thinking, is it today that we make everybody redundant? And we managed to hang in there, and we've managed to get through it. And I feel so optimistic and hopeful about the future. Now that we've got through it, we're much stronger. I think there's a renewed love for the hospitality industry. I think people didn't realise how much they loved us. They really love us, and we can't wait to get people back. I'm excited about creating moments of magic for people when they get to connect with their loved ones again. That makes me feel really, you know, really emotional. I'm excited about hosting weddings and events and life events. We proved to ourselves that when we were allowed to trade, even with restrictions that were very, very difficult, we bounced back, and Liverpool bounced back much better than most places in the country. So there's no better place to recover, I don't think, than Liverpool. And I feel a massive sense of relief that the large scale events can take place now. So for us, it's like wedding, corporate events, you know, for the arena, large events, music, all the stuff that Liverpool does really well. But we're in good shape. We've had a chance to sort of reshape things behind the scenes, introduce a little bit more technology, sort ourselves out, have a bit of a tidy down, and we're ready to go. We feel good, and I think most people do. And I don't think people will ever take going out for a meal or having a drink for granted ever again.
And Donna, you mentioned just then about your, particularly the large stores. Debenhams, Topshop have closed. Everybody says it's the end of the high street as we know it. Can we tell anybody about what Liverpool ONE are planning for those two units?
Can't give you.
Because it's not the end of the high street, is it, Donna?
No, it's not the end of the high street, so I can't give you the exact details on those units, but I can. You know, it didn't come as a surprise, and considerations, longer term planning is already underway. So there are options. But one of the things is that, you know, again, this is kind of well publicised, that those brands haven't survived because they haven't kept pace with consumer demand and the changing consumer behaviour. So some of the new businesses that will come in, some that have been announced already, On the Green, which will be up near Shavas Park, which is where people can come in and play on many of the world's best golf courses through e-gaming and technology. Therapy is a spa that will be available on South John Street. You know, you can pop next door and do your banking, and then, you know, pop back and have a face peel, or I've not checked the menu yet, but I'll be sure to. New restaurants, so new experiences, and that's the key to success. And I think that the one thing that Liverpool has in bucket loads in lots of innovation and creativity, and that comes through the city's events program. You know, if you go into the city centre when the stay-at-home order is lifted on the 29th, and you go out and you enjoy River of Light, you can stand back and you can just feel the creativity, the innovation, and the passion that comes in absolute bucket loads in the city, and that starts to come through. And that's what we have to work with, is to look at those opportunities, support those opportunities, and bring new businesses are being born out of the coronavirus, the pandemic, and the crisis. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. We have to support that and allow that to happen more quickly. And I'm absolutely confident that your shopping experience in Liverpool ONE and the wider city centre actually isn't just about a shopping experience. You're choosing a destination where you want to spend your leisure time and where you want to come together with your friends and family. If it's just about obtaining a product, do that online. You can do it, and you can do it easily. But actually, if you want the experience, then that's what's bringing people out. And it's the way that these businesses lead in terms of their own innovation. And we've seen lots of that happening within the existing businesses that continue to have operated in 2020 and will reopen again with this, with real optimism this year. So I think it's just really important to recognise that the one thing that's inevitable is change, but change brings some really good opportunities into the city. And I think 2021, actually, without being too naive, the vaccination programme is really, really vital. Testing is really, really vital. If we can get that running well as it is now, continue for that to run well in parallel with the economy getting back up and running, then I think this year will be a lot brighter than perhaps sometimes the news reports might lead you to believe. Thanks, Donna. I mean, clearly, as Scousers, one of the things we need to do this summer is actually come and enjoy our city. Too often, perhaps, and I'm just as guilty of that, finding time to actually travel elsewhere in the world is what we want to do, but and don't spend enough time here in the city that we tend to take for granted, because this is an exciting city. The businesses want to come, you just mentioned it, businesses want to come and invest here. Already we know that it's not just within Liverpool ONE that there are new brands coming. Within the BID area itself, on Bold Street, we've got new restaurants opening up. We have new retail opportunities opening up in Clayton Square. We know there's a department store opening up later this year. So there is optimism in the city because of the work that all of us who work in the visitor economy and in the city have been doing over the years. And it really is an exciting time as we start reopening from that. I just wanted also to mention that the Liverpool Without Walls, which is, Natalie, is one of the things you benefited from on Bold Street. Liverpool Without Walls, and Claire will pick this up on the next session, is actually being, it hasn't been relaunched because it never ceased. Obviously, we just had lockdowns, but Liverpool Without Walls will come back in an enhanced and a ramped up version as from April the 12th, obviously with more businesses able to eat outside in a better way that we will animate our streets. So there's more of that coming to be announced very shortly once we know all the full questions about how the restrictions and regulations will be in place. We're just waiting for the licensing regulations to come from government on that, but we know that it will be ready and in place. So we're looking forward very much towards that. Any final points from Natalie and Donna before we move on to Chris and the second part of our webinar today? I think, Bill, just one thing to mention, we've spoken there quite a lot about Liverpool city centre, but actually, you know, international tourism, that's a bit of a no-go at the moment. Fingers crossed, you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel there. So we are very much focused on domestic tourism, hopefully later this year. So I think it's really important just to point out that one of the things that as a city region we have going for us is Liverpool's openness and proximity to the wider city region and coastal, and, you know, encouraging people to understand the whole host of options that are open to them if they want to get into a city centre and out to the coast. I think the city region is pretty unrivaled in terms of what it can offer there. So, you know, very optimistic about the strength from domestic tourists this year, and, you know, the wider UK coming in and enjoying not just our great city, but also the wider city region.
Thanks, Donna. That's very much the work that Donna's leading on the LVEN Tourism Board around the marketing strategy. We'll be very much focusing that on a national basis. Clearly, we all want our international travellers to come back, but they will do, and they'll come back in bucket loads and plane loads, we hope, once we are able to allow international travellers back into the UK. But until then, about coming back into our city safely when we're able to do that.
Bill, I would say, I think whilst there's quite a lot of optimism from the leisure market, I think we need to think as a city about a stimulus for getting the corporate market back into the commercial district and giving and back into booking corporate events as well. Yep. So I think the likes of Old Hall Street, Water Street, all around those areas have just been completely decimated. But you know, we are not planning to open one fine day really until that we know that the office occupancy is at a certain level. But I think we need to do something to basically stimulate people getting back into the office and make the transition from working at home to working in the office smooth, and hopefully, you know, bring it forward as quickly as we can.
Yeah, thanks for that, raising that point, Natalie. It is something that we are working on, but obviously at this moment in time, we're a little bit hidebound by the fact that the government regulations saying they're not going to review that until we get to step 4, which 21st of June at the earliest. But it is about employers to start encouraging people back in where it's safe to do that, because we do know that we need our commercial district, city centre, very much part of that, and to get people back in. So thanks Natalie, thanks Donna. Please do remember the Q&A on there. There is a question already, which I'm sure Claire will ask, is going to talk about, which is the pilot events, but please do use chat and Q&A. And if I can hand across to Chris.
Thanks, Martin, Bill, and very good, positive and uplifting conversation there, Natalie and Donna, which I think symptomizes the passion of the city and desire of the city. So I'm sure this next session will build on that in bucket loads as we go into it. So Claire, I mean, you've been at the forefront of a lot of work working with government in terms of the very successful mass testing, and I know you're working also on the opportunities around pilot event testing. So it'd be good if you can give us an update on that, where you see that at the moment, and just that context which was being portrayed earlier about the things you're doing around the event strategy, about reopening the city and providing this really powerful experiential backdrop, which will help us go to market in the domestic audience to come to Liverpool as a must-see destination. So just updates around that would be great.
Cheers, Chris. It was just really lovely for me to hear from Natalie and Donna there about all the great things that, the positivity. I don't think it felt like that this time last year at all. It just felt like we were in shock. So it's really great to see that, and the resilience actually, and just to kind of commend them and others on their resilience to keep, shutting and opening and all of that. I think will all probably be a bit of post-traumatic shock on this, I think, which we actually is quite a serious point we do need to be ready for as a city, because I think this has taken a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of kind of hope, and this sector is brilliant at that, isn't it? So one of the things that we've been doing, over the last year, we've obviously done some great things about getting the city open and then closed again. So we did Without Walls, which was hugely successful and became a model nationally. So government picked up on that as a really good way of kind of getting hospitality viable and open and doing things quite quickly. We did all that, and then of course we had the opportunity in November from around mass testing to be the government pilot for mass testing, and the city took the step to be that kind of test pilot city, and the people of Liverpool completely embraced it, which was just wonderful. And as Natalie said, our rates came down, but what that showed to government was a real can-do city around this particular agenda. We built a relationship with them, and I've always had a very, very good relationship with DCMS anyway, but they're kind of my department. So at that point in time, we started to talk to them about if there were 5 things we could do. One of the reasons why people get tested is to kind of get their lives back, so they can go out again, so they can eat again, so they can dance again, so they can do all those things that they've been missing. So what do we do as a city to kind of use testing to kind of get those events and places up and running in a way that's safer. And we talked to government about it before Christmas. We tried to do it before Christmas, but then we went back into tier 3 with the rest of the country. We went back into lockdown, so it was too hard to do. And it's been kind of on and off the table as discussion points for probably about 6 months. We've kept going at it, and it kind of paid off just after Christmas because government made the decision they were going to do a roadmap. And what the roadmap was leaning very heavily on evidence, so on the data of what's safe and what's not, which is why you see the 2 weeks between everything. So schools opened up 2 weeks before the Rule of 6 comes in, 2 weeks before hospitality comes in. So they're kind of turning the dial up slowly this time, rather than probably what it was in the summer, which was very, very fast. So we got into conversations with BCMS and the HSC, so the Health Department and the Cultural Department, separately, and then it's very quite like government, lots of departments work very separately. So then they've brought in this brilliant guy called Martin Henderson for the DCMS to pull the whole thing together around events. So Liverpool's part of a national pilot, so it's not a Liverpool-led pilot, it's a national pilot. And the bits that we're concentrating on are opening up nightclub, which kind of, I'm not sure what people call nightclubs anymore, but opening up nightclubs, so kind of a music event essentially in a space in the city. And we're doing a business event with our great kind of friends at the arena, which will be great, and trialing that out, a comedy event, and then some sort of an outdoor kind of cultural, more family event. They've got to happen just after April the 12th, when the next set of guidelines kind of stop. So it'll be from April the 12th, but we've got to deliver all of those within 2 weeks, so that the information and the data that is collected by the brilliant scientists, and we are so lucky to have Liverpool University here. We wouldn't be anywhere near this if we hadn't got those fantastic scientists at Liverpool University, so that the scientists can then report the data back to government, so they can inform the roadmap for Boris Johnson to say around the 21st of June, really. And the evidence that we gather from these 4 events that we do, the event that's happening in Sheffield and the events that are happening in London, will inform the national picture. So ours are quite small, and it's kind of one night only. It's not opening up the sector forever. It's trialing one night with huge amounts of scientific evidence and advisors around us. And it's usually complex because, very boringly, there's about 15 different groups that are looking at this nationally, from SAGE through to other acronyms that I can't quite remember, but there's huge amounts of those. But the main thing for us, the reason why we were chosen, is one, because of our history around events in this city, which is unquestionable and really recognised, but also because of what we did with mass testing. So the city taking that leap into doing that has meant that we've got the opportunity to trial for the country the next set of opening. And we've also got a fantastic Director of Public Health, and Matt Ashton, who's worked kind of hand in hand with us on this and on this opportunity. So it's a really great opportunity. There's loads and loads and loads of work to do, because things that you forget, the things that you, it's so normal for us a year ago, isn't it, just to walk into a business event, you know, just to do that. But what we're trying to do now is unpick that whole journey of how you get to the event, what you do when you're there, what you do with your coat, what biscuit, you know, all those kind of details that you just completely take for granted are having to be unpicked so they fit the scientific kind of appraisal of it. So really, really complicated, really exciting. I'm really excited to be part of the national pilot. There's some bigger events that will be happening in London probably, and around the country. There's a run happening somewhere else. They're trying the sports side of things as well. And we'll see. I mean, it's going to be really hard work for those people that are involved in it. But there's a massive amount of government support for us on it, and it's dealing with government at the very highest level, because it's not going to be easy. I'll end on that note. It's actually not going to be easy. I'm looking at Faye because she's delivering a couple of them, so I'm just thinking operationally, but it's not going to be easy. But it's the right thing for us to do.
Yeah, and I think you're right there, Claire. I mean, I think the challenge is that the actual running of these is not totally in your own control, isn't it? You're having to satisfy the needs of a lot of other scientific and other advisors around this. But I think it's massively positive that Liverpool is in this sort of place with government that they look at the city and can trust the city to put on a kind of effective testing in this sort of arena, which will help not only the event sector in Liverpool, but the wider event sector across the country. And then just looking at the current event programme, Claire, we've got River of Light out there at the moment. I think an absolutely credit, because it's a stunning display. We probably got a few more there than we probably anticipated between March the 23rd and 29th. But in terms of how you see the major events calendar moving forward through the summer, any kind of points you could sort of lend the audience to in terms of your direction of travel on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we're looking at is that kind of trail event, which really works because it means people are moving all the time. They're not kind of really standing still, they're not gathering, they're not watching the stage, they're not kind of doing all of that. So for us, outdoor will be, well, we love outdoor anyway, don't we? So outdoor's not the problem. Although, Natalie, it's quite interesting listening to you talk about the weather, because welcome to my life. That's all I do. I'm on a weather. I've got 6 different weather channels on my phone, and I just go for whichever one makes me happy at the time. So yes, so everything will be outdoors, and it will be similar to, not obviously the same as River of Light, but there will be different trails. So it'll be trying to take people through the city, so that they can, you know, use restaurants and bars and the retail and move them through the city in different ways. I mean, I've got to say, the River of Light is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it stunned me really, and the images that are now around the world of Liverpool. So it was in the Brisbane Herald, or it's in the Singapore Times, been in the Guardian. You know, it's gone national. All those brilliant images, and that's what we need to do really, because we need to create a way of things that people want to come in to see for the city, so we can build that confidence back, but making sure they're walking through the city, so there's a whole kind of flow of people walking rather than just concentrating. And then when it's safe to do so, so probably kind of nearing the end of summer, looking at the pier head as a venue, and looking at that as a venue space, and bringing kind of some of the stuff that potentially we would have done in parks before into the city centre, to kind of again give that economic boost to the retail hospitality sector within the city centre, because that's what we're going to have to do in the next couple of years. Yeah. You know, we're absolutely going to have to go full throttle at getting people back. And there's a whole thing as well. I was on a call with other core cities yesterday around competition in Faye's world and Donna's world. It's important, but actually for cities, I think when we're talking about bringing international visitors back, we need to start now looking at collaborations more, especially across the north, because everywhere's got such a different personality. You know, if you're looking at kind of 2-3 week destinations, which is nothing to kind of to Americans, we need to start working much better together as northern destination places as well, really. So that's on my mind as well. But really, really positive. And I think what's interesting for me after being in Liverpool such a long time is this isn't dissimilar to when we came out of capital culture. There's, you know, we've got to build again, but we're building from a completely different base. So we've got the tourists that come now. I mean, I can't give anything away around cruises, but there's a huge interest in Liverpool in terms of cruise liners. There's massive interest. So there's loads of really, really, really positive, exciting stuff that's coming around the corner. And then it's how we kind of attract those international tourists to come, not just for football, but to come and stay longer. And I think that's probably going to be a real key point for us.
Okay, Claire, thanks for that. Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, I think one of the learnings out of the whole pandemic about increased collaboration and coordination, I think the North's well placed for that, and I think we've made some headway on that, but there's still more to do. But we actually, if you combine the assets just of the Northwest alone, there's some really compelling offers within that, and I think the more we can join up the messaging about that, the more we will provide an overarching, compelling reason to come to this part of the country. So I'll come back to you in a minute, Claire, but maybe if I move to yourself, Faye. I mean, obviously in the same context as Bill was talking about the importance of Liverpool ONE, we would put the same sort of analogy on the ACC campus, really an important catalyst for major events, major conferences, the whole world of business tourism. I mean, from your perspective, you know, looking at the roadmap as it goes forward and how that is reflecting in terms of people making commitments or just looking, what's your sort of take on the situation at the moment from an ACC perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. As you say, we're hugely aware of the ripple effect that we have as a business in terms of the visitor economy. So we've seen a huge amount of positive optimism from all sides, really, the sector on the back of the government's lockdown announcement. So on the basis that the roadmap stays to plan, and the events research programme that we're delighted to be able to play our part in is successful, then what we're seeing really is a phased return of events. So the expectation is that exhibitions will return first, and we're expecting to have some B2C and some B2B exhibitions as early as June and July. As we then move forwards in terms of October, we're expecting a reasonably fulsome calendar of conferences, more in terms of corporate conferences, particularly in the sort of retail environment, but then in terms of national associations as well, returning more en masse from October onwards. It won't be as busy as a typical Q3 and Q4 that we've seen in previous years, but it's hopefully a fairly strong order book from that point onwards. From a sports and entertainment perspective, aside from ones that are highly reliant on international travel, again, 2022 is widely reported to be an incredibly busy and positive year from an arena perspective. So we will absolutely all hopefully get back to attending events from, again, sort of October onwards. So I think we've seen a huge change in terms of levels of optimism in the sector on the back of the roadmap. So it's going to be a sort of a slower phase for the first 6 months, I'd say, but then by the time we get to October onwards, we hope to be able to bring in significant numbers of visitors into the local economy, to get back to supporting the hotels, the restaurants, the bars, taxi drivers, and so on. We just need the roadmap to go to plan. And of course, we need to keep lobbying and requesting for support for recovery-led activities. Be that marketing, be that subvention support to try and attract business events into the city. I think it's really important that we sort of keep that focus on from a recovery stance. But overall, it's really positive optimism that we're seeing from all sectors.
So take myself off mute.
Sorry.
Yeah, are you seeing anything in terms of the approach from, say, association and conference organisers in terms of the kind of model going forward about what, between the physical, between the virtual, the hybrid model? Is there any indications coming through about how there might be some changes in the pattern of behaviour of organisers going forward, or are you seeing any of that manifesting itself at the moment?
Yeah, I think, I think virtual events has been a bit like working from home full time. I think there was perhaps a time very early on where perhaps people thought it was going to have more of a long-term impact on the market. And actually, because it's been going on for such a duration now, people absolutely value more than ever the benefit of face-to-face live events, when it comes to knowledge transfer, when it comes to networking, when it comes to the benefit of those sort of conversations that you have. So whilst there is absolutely a place for virtual, I think what the industry expects to see is that hybrids will be a way of supporting conferences to reach new audiences, or for those conversations to be elongated, sort of pre-conference or post-conference. But the industry is desperate to get back to live events, and we're not seeing a material impact really in terms of demand longer term for people getting back into cities and coming to attend an event in person. It's just sort of enriching, I guess, that live experience rather than replacing or displacing it.
Okay, great stuff. And last but not least, Bob, good to come to you. First and foremost, a warm welcome to the city. I know you've just taken over recently as general manager of the Crowne Plaza. We wish you every success for that. You've come at what could be best described as an interesting time, I'm sure you're finding. But how, from a Crowne Plaza perspective, how are you, obviously for you the key date is that May the 17th. How are you starting to put preparation to that? What sort of reaction have you had in terms of customers booking hotel stays and getting your team back together? How's all that panning out for you?
Well, we've been, thanks Chris for that. We've been open since obviously January, and like most of the city, pretty quiet in terms of occupancy for the time being. From the 12th of April, we'll be opening the gym, leisure club, and obviously we'll have some terrace activity as well, as Natalie was talking about earlier, depending on the weather, how much we invest in it, we'll see. But we have got some plans in terms of working on terrace. Although I have to say the weather in Liverpool and the welcome is very warm compared to where I've been the last 18 years in Manchester. So it is noticeably better. 17th of May, we are seeing some activity around that, but I would have to say people, I think, are still a bit hesitant around that date. We're seeing more from the 21st of June onwards, where people are a bit more certain about actually there's no restrictions and we can come and stay with you. So from the 21st of June, we're seeing more pickup in our leisure demand, and a lot of the meetings and events business that people have postponed at least once, maybe twice over the past year. They're now confirming those from June onwards. And we're looking at really Q3 and Q4 before we get back to sort of what we would expect to be at trading at those times of the year. Our challenge, I suppose, at the moment is around our staffing. And again, as Natalie was saying, we had some very difficult conversations with people and redundancy processes last year, which wasn't nice at all. But we're now staffed really for about 50% occupancy. So our challenge will be when we start bringing people back in stream and calling all those people that have worked for us in the past, and also getting people back up to speed. We're trying to bring them back into the hotel, give them some shifts to get them used to operating again, because some of them have been working for months and months and months, and it's taken a bit of time to get up to speed. So we're trying to get them in, get even those people on fewer hours to try and get some sort of easing them back into work. But yeah, I think for us, probably the June date is more. We're seeing more activity around bookings.
Just building on that, Bob, in terms of the staffing, because obviously we've had the other challenge of Brexit and the issues around EU staff, EU settlement and people staying here and encouraging people to come and work here. In terms of how you see that labour market, in terms of getting yourself, when you get back to some degree of normality about getting people back into the industry and not losing people in the industry. How are you sort of seeing that in terms of the access to the labour market you will need in order when you are, as I say, back at full pelt?
I think a lot of people really missed working in hospitality, and they've found that while some people have actually took the opportunity to go and work in other industries, we find a lot of people really miss that interaction. We're a people industry. They don't do very well at home, actually. They don't like being at home working or not even working. So I think there's a lot of people that want to come back and work in hospitality. It's always a challenge to find best people, but I think that's going to be around some of the things we've learned recently about flexibility. We're getting more people that are already working for us asking for more flexible working, because that work-life balance, I think, is important to them. I think our industry has got better at that in terms of understanding what people are looking for. And I think there are people that want to come and work for us. So it's going to be a challenge. And I think the sooner we get on with that, the better. It's just getting some certainty around these dates and not, as we've done in the past 12 months, opened up and then having to close down again. It's been really difficult for everybody. And that's why we've ended up in the position where I am now with fewer staff than this time last year.
I think that's the overriding issue, isn't it, really? That I think everybody's comfortable with the roadmap, as long as this roadmap means that we don't go back into another lockdown going forward. I think it's that hokey-cokey scenario of opening and closing that makes it immensely difficult for businesses to plan. And I think, in the context, I know with the arena and others, it's if bookers don't feel confident about planning what they want to do, they don't commit. So I think that certainty, whether it's to go out for something to eat or to stay in the hotel or to go to a business event, I think it's all going to be relevant to people's confidence. And I think what we see at the moment is is a lot of lookers, but not a lot of bookers at the moment, as they begin to get a surety around what the social distancing regulations are going to look like, how it's going to affect them, and also for businesses to be able to plan around that as well. But I think, you know, in the context of the additions from yourself, Faye and Claire, I think that's building on what Natalie and Donna say. I think, you know, the various areas of Liverpool in good hands in terms of building up the kind of opportunities that we have to make sure that we convince a domestic market that if you're going to be, as you will be this summer, particularly staying in the UK, then without a fear of a doubt, you must have Liverpool high on your list of places to visit. And I'm sure that's the message we can get out over the next few weeks or so. Okay, so thanks very much for that. Bill, I'm just conscious of time and also just give enough time to pick up any final comments and questions, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thanks, Chris. You'd think by now I'd learned to switch off mute, but anyway. Just a quick question, Claire, for you. And there's in our questions, somebody's asked the question, to what extent are the general public aware of the pilot involvement? So really, people are thinking, we've got these events coming into Liverpool, but how do people understand that actually these are only pilot and test events, and perhaps how do we get that message out? These are not people being selected to benefit from an event and they're being picked and chosen. These are people actually going to be heavily involved in the scientific process to get data that will inform the sector reopening in June.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it there, Bill. I mean, I think we did a lot of press. Obviously, the government did a lot of press it was a couple of weeks ago now on it. So that was widely picked up. I mean, I think what's great about Liverpool is all eyes are on us again. So it kind of just reasserts that kind of competitive advantage we have around this area. We'll be giving out, as soon as government will be doing a press release, I think probably in the next week or so, that will set out the details of what they want and what they're going to be doing with Liverpool. So that will be out in the next week or so, and then it will be really clear, because I think people might have thought we're doing giant, you know, or something huge, or football or something. We're not. We're doing kind of 4 relatively small, very discrete events. Probably the one that will get the most interest. We've had interest from all over the world actually, but the one that will get the most interest will probably be the opening of a nightclub, or but it will be for one night only, and it will inform how the rest of the sector can or can't open up. So it's really interesting, but it is a very academic and science-led project, if you like. It's not an events-led project, which is quite a weird way of looking at it. Who would have thought I'd ever said that this time last year? Who would have thought my partners would be the Liverpool University and a load of scientists? But it is very much a science and data-led project, not an events and cultural-led one.
Yeah, no, it's an opportunity to raise funding. It's about playing our part to get the industry to be open to the benefit of all. You know, this is a we team effort, not about sort of individual venues, etc.
That's great. Thanks, Claire, for that. And just to say that comment from Lucy, just saying she thinks the River of Light is fantastic. So it's good. And actually, there's enough space to move and take your time around the installations. And it's the same also for the biennial, which opened last weekend. It's just showing that this city, as Donna said, is a great city with space. You are able to move around safely. So take your time, be gentle, be patient, be kind. Just as we come towards the end of our webinar today, so thank you all for your attendance. I suppose as the chair of the Visitor Economy Board for Liverpool and the chief executive of the Business Improvement District, I suppose it would be remiss of me not to say a few things about the report that came out yesterday. We've all had time to read the Max Caller report, and as we know, it is a report into just a part of the work of the city. And I would actually point you to the executive summary that says Liverpool is one of the leading UK attractions for tourism, and it will be, and still will be, one of the leading UK and international attractions for tourism. But Liverpool is a great city with history and traditions. But also the important thing is to say that the City Council has many hard-working, long-serving, committed and dedicated officers delivering key services in difficult circumstances. And likewise, there are councillors of all parties who encapsulate the best traditions of local democracy. This is a great city that we're all part of, so we shouldn't let this report be used in a way to beat the city for past failings. We acknowledge that there are clear failings that have been shown in this report, and that's for the City Council. led by Tony and by the officers and members to deal with that. We fully support the city in the work that it is doing. Indeed, this is a time for us as a city to come together and to work together to reopen our visitor economy and to reopen our city. So we will certainly be doing that. So I will leave others to comment in detail about this report. That's not for me to do, other than to say that within the visitor economy, we fully support the city. But from a bid perspective, I would just say, first of all, there are a couple of things to say. Our annual showcase will be on April the 14th, when we announce plans for the future work of the BID Company is moving forward. So please do, as you've stayed loyal to us throughout this pandemic in linking into our webinars, please do join that BID showcase on April the 14th. And then also, I would just point you also that the visitor survey from Visit Liverpool is still live. So please do look for that link and respond to that. Get friends and family to share and respond to that link, so that we and Chris in Marketing Liverpool and Visit Liverpool and the whole of Elven can shape the visitor economy strategies to the way that our visitors wish this city to be. So thank you all for that today. The surveys are on there now, thanks Alvaro. Just to say, we will be holding another webinar online at the end of April, and hopefully we'll start planning towards having a physical meeting of this group, so which will be great to share with us, so we can see what all our participants look like in the flesh. But look forward to that. So please stay safe, keep getting tested. If you get an opportunity for a vaccination, go and get vaccinated. Go and enjoy the River of Light safely and get back into our shops. But before that, have a great Easter. Thanks.